Hello there, I'm Artistic Gamer 7 and welcome back to another speed build here on the channel. This is some more of the Haunted Builds little mini-series I am doing. This is probably going to be the last build of the month. Well, it will be the last build of the month. If you all would like for me to actually still continue this series, like maybe do it like once a month, even though the spooky month is gone, because, you know, I don't mind doing haunted builds past the spooky month because I'm okay with watching spooky things in other months other than October. And some people are. So if y'all would like me to still continue to do the haunted builds as like a once a month or twice a month type thing, let me know down in the comments below. But for surely this is the last one of October and potentially the last one of this mini-series until maybe I bring it back next October. Now this build in particular is a pretty well-known building for multiple reasons. It has a pretty high standing within like paranormal communities, historical communities, and within like criminal murder community type thing. And honestly probably has been built by others. I did actually, while doing research, see someone had made it like a few years back in Sims 3 and had a video on it. It wouldn't surprise me if more people actually have tried to build this, but this is my version of it and sort of talking about it as well. Now before going into all the history and things like that, I will talk about the build itself and just the things that took with this build, like what amount of effort I had to put in. Also, I forgot to mention the name. This is the Lizzie Borden bread and breakfast. I can't speak, apparently, at all. But yeah, anyway, so I did actually find blueprints of this build. I don't know how current those blueprints are. And with these blueprints, they actually did include some of the furniture, and they had, like, little key things that was like 1, 2, 3, 4, this is blah, 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 and blah. And were some of the key items in the case of this like murder mystery were and things like that. So it was really helpful, but at the same time sort of confusing. And I mean this because I did have these blueprints, but again, I don't know when these blueprints were created. And they did have like green and yellow dots. Green meant like this is for surely where this item was located on like the day of the murders. And this is an item that is known to be... Yellow is like an item that was known to be in the room, but not sure if this is its exact location of how it was. But it's been put there in a guess, basically. So basically this is like a bed and breakfast. You actually can stay the night here and things like that. It's also sort of considered a museum. So it's very more... It's trying to be as historically accurate as possible. They did have to redo a lot of the stuff. The wallpapers, the flooring, and things like that did get redone, so it's not like the exact same, but they tried to get it as close as possible, including the furniture. They're all like authentic timepieces from that time, but not from the actual house of the Borden days. And where they're not 100% sure on every single item in the room, where it was at and how it was 100% laid out, it is... I do think they do tend to move things around here and there, stuff that they're not sure of, or like maybe like when they're doing different events, or just to slightly change things up. I'm not sure. But when I was finding pictures that people had taken inside the house, a lot of them did look the same. A lot of the items looked the same and similar and in pretty close placement. But every once in a while there'd be items that from one picture to another was not in the same placement. And the way that the pictures were taken or the blueprint was made was almost the opposite of each other. They're mirrored, so it may be like some sort of effect going on with the picture being taken, or like when someone made the blueprint it got flipped. I don't know, but it just really confused my brain so much. So because I was trying to get as close as possible to both using the pictures and the blueprint, eventually I decided I was just mainly going to go off the blueprint with what furniture pieces it showed, and then just sort of quickly look at the photos to get some color inspiration and things like that. Now, I will say with like wallpaper and flooring, this whole house is done mostly in carpet. There are a few places that I think were wood. I may have included more places with wood flooring than it actually is, but a lot of the house is carpet. But it's very like in-your-face carpet, and the wallpaper is also very in-your-face. And we don't have too many carpets and wallpapers that are in your face. So I basically had to sort of play with it. I know in the master bedroom I actually put like one of the more plainer carpets, but I put a rug down to try to bring some more of that color, because the color of the carpet and was like multiple colors, but the color of the carpet I used was only a single color, so, you know, things like that. And also, like, honestly, like, there's a lot of wallpapers and stuff like that that I don't use because I do think it looks a little bit older, but when you're actually trying to build an older home and you're not trying to use the same wallpaper, you realize there's actually not that many. So it was a little challenging to make sure to try not to use the same wallpaper or flooring anywhere in the house. I did actually use some of the flooring, I know for sure, more than once, and I think I actually used maybe one of the wallpapers more than once, but obviously in a different color palette. But it was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be for those things, but I did try to make it look as much like, oh my goodness gracious, there's so much going on, because that's sort of what it was. Like, there was wallpaper and this, like, crazy carpet design going on, and it's just a lot to take in, along with the furniture and stuff usually having like some sort of fabric also on it, and that fabric having a print. It was just a lot. But yeah, so all of that sort of did have a little bit of a challenge attached to it in making this, the fact that all this stuff, there was limited stuff for Sims, and then all this stuff was also redone and refurbished, and, like, you know, they did use accurately timed pieces of furniture and things like that, but again, it's not the same furniture that was in the Lizzie Borden house. But I will say, eerily enough, the couch where Mr. Borden's body was found, you can actually able to see the pictures of the crime scene photos. They're in black and white, so if you end up looking this up, you can't really tell much detail because the fact that it's a very old black and white camera. But what you can see of the couch that was there when he was there, and the couch that they have in this house, they look so similar. Like, they had to have someone, like, recreate this couch. But it's a little eerie, but, you know, hey, it's a big part of why this house makes the money it does, because of these. So I can get why they would have went through the time to actually get a piece recreated in almost exact likeness to that piece, oddly enough. Also, when it comes to the basement and the barn, there is, like, no pictures of those two things. The barn, actually, I recently found out, technically was torn down, and they rebuilt it in the likeness of the original barn, and it is now used as, like, the reception area and a gift shop area for this house. So I tried to recreate it in more of the sense of how it was back in the day, and that's how the blueprints that I found for each level was. And the basement really didn't have as much detail as the other floors. Like, it said wood room, and there was 2 wood rooms, and fruit cellar, which I couldn't really do much with because we don't have a whole lot of things that are fruit other than fruit and bowls and stuff like that. So obviously they just didn't have fruit bowls sitting down there. And there was the thing mention of trunks, because all the trunks were searched by the police. So that was something they made note of on the blueprints. But other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of detail compared to the rest of the floors for the basement. So, and there was no pictures that I can find, even though you would think there would be, because part of the historical element of the murders actually involves something dealing with the basement. But anyway, I actually have recently seen a show. Like, I rewatched a show that went to the Lizzie Borden house. There is quite a bit of stuff going on in the basement, but a lot of it's pipe working and, like, vent systems and things like that. So stuff that you really can't do a whole lot of in Sims anyway, so I couldn't really have done a lot of that in the first place. Also, the attic is a crazy mess because there's no way to have, like, walls that just lead into the slants of the roofing. And that's how this technically is set up, even, like, in the actual house. Like, you could see the slant of the roof in the pictures of the rooms in the attic. But there is no way to get that in Sims without the walls actually sticking out from the roof. So I had to use half walls, and obviously half walls are not going to fully do the trick because they're not going to fully go up to the roof. But it was the best way to get some wall coverage without actually protruding from the roof itself. So it looks a little odd up there, but it was the best I could do. I wish there maybe could be a feature like that, or like maybe a thing on the walls that you can click, conform to the roof or something like that, so that you actually could do attic rooms with slanted roofs. I think that would be a cool little feature, but oh well. Right now it's not a feature, so I had to go with what I had. This build will be up on the gallery if you do want to download it for any reason. If you want to try to change it into a modern home or something like that and forget the fact that it's the Lizzie Borden house, or you want to do something with this house in general, if for some reason you do want that, you want to download it, I will have it up on my gallery, which is Artistic Gamer 7, so you can go find it there if you so please. So at this point, I do feel the need to state that I will be talking about actual historical events that involve some dark details. I will be talking about the Borden murders and some of the stuff about that evolving around the case. So if you are a little bit sensitive to that stuff, or you don't like hearing that stuff, you can feel free to mute the sound at this point, so that if you still want to watch the build and see the screenshot at the end, this would be the time to do it, because I am going to be start talking about the historical aspects of what happened in this house leading up into the hauntings. If y'all would like for me to put down below where I talk about the hauntings, like the time code, I can do that, because those won't really involve some of the more gruesome aspects of this tale. So if you would still like to be able to hear those, so you want to sort of know when you can turn your sound back on, I can put a time code down there if y'all would like. Just let me know down in the comments below. The Vorden House is in Fall River, Massachusetts. Andrew Borden was the father, Abby Borden was the stepmother, and there was the two daughters, Lizzie Borden and Emma Borden. Emma was 9 years older than Lizzie. Their maternal mother, Sarah Borden, had died when they were younger. 3 years after her death, their father, Andrew, had married Abby. Both girls were known to not really like Abby too well, and Lizzie was often quoted calling Abby Miss Borden. She never called her mother or even by Abby for the most part, apparently. She mainly said Miss Borden. And part of the reason why they actually did not like Abby is they believe, especially Lizzie believed, that Abby had married their father for money. Because their father was actually quite a wealthy man. He actually didn't live in, like, the most richest area of town, but he was known to actually be very frugal. At the time, the house did not have what a lot of wealthy families would have had within it, like electricity and working, like a full working water system. Basically trying to save money where he could, even though he was actually quite wealthy. So that is a big reason why they didn't really care for Abby, because they really thought that's why she married him. Now, also living in the house at the time was Bridget Sullivan, who was the live-in maid. They actually called her Maggie, and I have recently found out why they called her Maggie. I never fully understood that, but it was because their previous live-in maid was actually named Maggie. Now, I could not tell if Maggie had passed away or if she had moved, but basically they had liked Maggie, and they didn't quite see Bridget the same way. Bridget was a 25-year-old, like, Irish immigrant who came in, so they didn't see her in the highest regards, the Andrew and Abby, like they did their previous maid. So they literally just called her the same name of their previous one, because I guess they thought it was better, which is really, really sad and rude for Bridget, but that's what they called her. And at the time of the murders, Emma and Lizzie's uncle on their maternal side was actually visiting the family, and he hadn't actually spoke to the family since the mother's death or really had anything to do with them. So it was pretty strange he was there. He came to visit for like 3 days, and he stayed in the guest room. In fact, he had just literally got there the day before the murders, and he did stay the day after. Reportedly, originally the reports say that he slept elsewhere, but later on it is said too that he actually slept back in the guest room, which was actually where Abby had been killed. So he still slept in the room after the fact, which is quite weird. So on August 4th, 1892, all these people were present, and this was the day that the murders took place. So they all ate breakfast together, and then John, which is the uncle, left to go visit his niece around 8:40 something a.m. in the morning, and eventually Andrew left for a morning walk sometime after 9 a.m. So sometime in between 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., Abby, the stepmother, went upstairs to the guest room to make up the bed and things like that. Usually Emma and Lizzie handled these chores. But Emma was actually gone. She wasn't there at breakfast, which I forgot to mention. I basically said everyone. But anyway, but Emma was basically gone. She was quite a few miles away from the house, so she wasn't there. And I'm not sure why Lizzie didn't do it at this point, or unless maybe Abby just done it for just to have something to do. Who knows? But she was up in the guest room, and around 9 a.m., 10:30 a.m., somewhere in that time frame, she was struck in the side of the head with a hatchet or an axe by her killer, and she then fell forward face down and was struck 17 more times. They do believe that she did see her killer, but it was obviously too late by the time she'd been hit in the side of the head for her to really do anything. She fell, and she proceeded to die there on the second floor in the guest room. Now, at this time, Bridget was outside actually cleaning the windows. She had been told to clean the windows, even though it was a very extremely hot day, and that's what she was outside doing. Not quite sure where Lizzie was at the point of Abby's murder. I tried looking for it, and couldn't see anything. She does change what she says quite often, but I'm not quite sure where she was saying she was during Abby's. I do know in one point, I think I remember something about the basement, but I'm not entirely sure. Now, Andrew actually returned home around 10:30 a.m., which is why the speculation of Abby's death is somewhere in between 9 and 10:30, just because of people's accounts. And he actually could not get his key to open the door, and he had called out to get help opening the door, and Sullivan, the maid, had actually come to help him get into the house, because there's like 2 stairways to this upper section, and you can actually go up one set of stairs and never go through one set of rooms, and vice versa. She'd actually found the door jammed and basically said a few words, and then ended up hearing what she testified to be a laugh that sounded like Lizzie's from up on the top of the stairway. Now, this was pretty big at the time. Later on, Lizzie said she was not on the stairs, anywhere near the upper section of the doorway, and Sullivan technically didn't see her. She just heard a laugh at the time and thought it was Lizzie, but there was no 100% proof that it was Lizzie. But the reason why this is big, because if it was actually Lizzie's voice she heard giggling on top of the stairs, you can actually see Abby's bodies from the stairs. Often when people go on tours here now, a lot of times the tour guide will ask if someone would offer to lay in the same spot where Abby's body was, and then let the rest of the tour guests, walk up the stairs. And the way where the room was laid out, with the door open, things like that, you can actually see eye level with the floor and see straight under the bed, and would be able to see Abby's body. So if she was on the staircase and Abby was already dead at this time, she should have seen her. But again, there was no for sure proof, because Bridget did not actually see her. She just thought she heard her. Now, Lizzie basically said she was down in the main section of the house when that occurred, and that it was not her giggling, that she did not laugh, and she was not on the top of the stairs. She ended up saying that she helped her father onto the couch and took off his boots and gave him some slippers, which is contradictory to the crime scene photos of Andrew actually still wearing his boots. But that is what she stated, saying that she had done. She then proceeded to go out to the barn, and she said she was out there for about 20-30 minutes, and there actually was a neighbor who could place her outside around the time she said she was outside in the barn. Now, Sullivan had went back upstairs to her room, but she didn't go up the stairs where you could see Abby's body. She went up to the other stairs, because that is the easier, quicker way to get to where her 3rd floor bedroom was, up in the attic. She went up there to lay down after being tired after cleaning the windows all day in the hot sun. So she was up on the 3rd story, and Lizzie was supposedly out in the barn. John was still gone, and obviously Emma was supposed to be away, quite a few miles away from home. And Abby was already dead at this time, though no one had found her. Around 11:10 a.m., Lizzie had actually called up to Sullivan up on the 3rd floor, saying, "Maggie, come quick. Father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him." Now, also, I did read a thing where she had told her to immediately go find a doctor, so Bridget didn't even technically go into the room, but the wounds were so fresh that the blood was still running. So it was very, very recent that he had been murdered. Now, Abby and Andrew was approximately murdered about an hour and 30 minutes apart from each other, so that is a pretty long time span. And again, he was also attacked with a hatchet axe-like object while he was asleep on this couch. So both of them had been attacked by a similar weapon, but was killed quite a big time frame apart from each other. Dr. Bowen, the family's physician, is the one who came. He did pronounce the bodies dead, though technically it was Andrew that he looked at first. 2 hours later, the police came and were talking to Lizzie, basically asking people's whereabouts and things like that, and if they heard anything. Lizzie had actually talked about how she initially reported, anyway, that's a better way to state it, that she had heard a groan, scraping, and things like that before entering the house, and then she later told him that she didn't hear anything when entering the house. She had also told people that Abby had received a telegram of a sick friend to come see them urgently, and that she had been gone. But then she also said, well, I think she came back, and it was actually Sullivan and a neighbor who went upstairs to go check for Abby to see if she was there or okay, and they're the ones who found Abby. One thing I recently also found out, I actually found out from watching the show that I found right before recording this, they actually performed the autopsies in the dining room. So they performed them in the house that this happened, and it was in the dining room, and that's really, really strange to me, but back in those days, they didn't really have ways to preserve bodies and things like that, and evidence as much as we do nowadays, so I guess, they had to do it as quickly as possible to try to figure out exactly what happened and maybe get some clues. But from reading, honestly, this investigation was doomed from the start. There was a lot of suspicious behavior on multiple people's accounts, and honestly, the police did not do a very good job. So, leading up to the murders, the Borden family actually had been sick for like a week or so before the murders, and because of that, they didn't search the house. I guess it was fear that, something was in the house, something was contagious, not sure. So they didn't initially search the house when this happened. They also did not check Lizzie or anyone else for blood stains on the day of the murder. Also, another reason why they really didn't search extremely well was because of Lizzie saying she did not feel well because of what had just happened. And they did initial look through on the two main rooms and things like that, but they didn't go deep searching or anything like that because of Lizzie not feeling well, because of this sickness that was going on in the house. They let her go lay down. Now, when they were doing a quick look around, they actually did find in the basement 2 hatches, 2 axes, and a hatchet head that had a broken handle. The handle appeared to look like it may have just broken recently. And also, the actual hatchet itself had ash and things, looked like it was sort of deliberately put on it to make it look like it was older. So that was suspected to be the murder weapon, but never proven to be the murder weapon. And again, because of this mysterious illness that everyone in the household had leading up to the week before these murders, they actually did not take these hatchets with them. So even though they had thoughts about it, they didn't take them. They left them in the house because they were afraid they may have been contaminated with whatever they had. Now, it was also noted that Lizzie had actually went and was asking for I'm not saying that right, acid in a diluted form from a local drugstore. So there is some theories out there that maybe she originally tried poisoning them, but it didn't work. But later it was also said the sickness was probably food poisoning because of, I read it somewhere. It was a particular food that they had noted was at the residence and seemed not so safe. And that's what people believe, because the stomachs of Andrew and Abby were also checked, and they did not find any poison, but it was odd that Lizzie was asking for this. She said she actually got it to clean stains out of a particular fur garment of some kind. Now, Lizzie and Emma's friend Alice Russell had actually decided to stay with them the night following the murders, and John was back in the house at this point. Again, he said that he was originally stated as sleeping in like the extra room in the attic, like I think it's like an unfinished guest room or something. At least that's what the blueprint called it. But that's where he originally was stated, but now it is all stated that he actually stayed in the guest bedroom where Abby was murdered the night following the murders, which is so weird to me. Whether you did it or not, that's just weird. They did actually have police stationed all around the house that night, and the police reported that they'd actually seen Russell and Lizzie go down into the cellar, and they had a kerosene lamp and a slop pill. He did state that he did see the two women leave, but later seen Lizzie return, but couldn't really tell what she was doing. Now, around August 6th, after the murders, police had finally done a more thorough search of the house, inspecting both Lizzie and Emma's clothing, as well as taking the broken hatchet and stuff and taking them as evidence. Now, the next day, Russell had entered the kitchen to actually find Lizzie tearing up a dress. Lizzie was stated that she was tearing it up so that she could throw it in the fire because it had gotten paint on it. She had rubbed up against some wet paint, and the dress was basically ruined, so that's why she was throwing it into the fire. Now, obviously, that dress was never to be determined whether it was the dress that she wore on the murders or not, but still, all the things are very, very suspicious, but it's not only just suspicious for Lizzie, because technically Emma also didn't like Abby as much either, so there is some theories that maybe she did it, and that she actually was able to get to the house and go straight back in time for the telegram to reach her, that her parents were dead. It was also stated that maybe John had done something as well, because, again, he actually didn't really have much to do with the family after the Lizzie and Emma's maternal, whatever, biological mom, had died, and then all of a sudden he was spending like 3 days with them out of nowhere, and this happens. He also was, by his career, he was a butcher. And then there are even some theories that it was Sullivan because of basically the way that she was sort of treated or the way that she was acted. Maybe it was something to do with her, or maybe even that it was a combination of people that did it. Now, Lizzie was actually charged with the murders and actually spent some days in jail until her trial and stuff like that, but ultimately was acquitted. A lot of this evidence that they had was circumstantial. Even though it's very oddly circumstantial, it still was technically circumstantial. And back in these days, the jury was nothing but men, and a lot of times the viewpoint of women was, oh no, it's a woman. She couldn't have committed these horrible, atrocious, gruesome murders. So ultimately she was acquitted, but it's never been fully surely figured out who did it, even to this day. No one ever admitted to it or even gave slight hint to it. Both Emma and Lizzie never married, and they actually died very close to the same time frame. Emma was technically older, but she died 9 days after Lizzie died, but she died in a nursing home. Lizzie died at home. Lizzie actually did stay in Falls River, and I actually seen an episode of one show called Kindred Spirits where they actually went to where Lizzie eventually lived, which is Maplecroft is what she called it. Emma and Lizzie both lived there, but after a dispute that happened during some sort of party, Emma left and said that she would never go back, and say that she didn't want to talk about Lizzie or anything, and Lizzie had actually changed her name to Lisbeth at this time, and it's actually on her gravestone. It was, I guess, part of a way of trying to put the past behind her, but at the same time she said she wanted to stay in Falls River, so the day when people were proved that she was innocent, she could be there when they figured that out. Obviously, that was never found out. But there is so many mysteries to this. The fact that, and the thing is, during the trial, Lizzie was acting very oddly, very strangely. She was contradicting herself all the time. But then she was also being put on morphine and things like that because of her nerves. So it's hard to understand whether or not it was the drugs or if it was her, but she was contradicting herself even when she wasn't on drugs. But again, was that a nerve thing or something else? It is also stated that maybe she had some sort of mental thing going on. So there's so many ifs and so many not knowns that just such a huge mystery. Basically, the police work wasn't done very well in this. There was too many ifs and buts, so many circumstantial stuff, so many coincidences. Anyone could have honestly done this. Again, and they all have technically in some ways reasons. There's even one out there that I forgot to mention about there was a chance that Lizzie was technically a lesbian and she actually apparently had potentially had a relationship or something going on with Bridget. It was never confirmed, even though later in life it was even said to thought that Lizzie may have been lesbian. But again, never necessarily confirmed, but they could have done it together because some would say that Abby would have acted in disgust and maybe after she found out, she was disgusted and things like that, and Abby was killed, and then they went to tell the father, and he reacted the same way, and the same thing happened to him. But there is so many things, and there was a lot of arguments going on in the family. Like, not too long before the murders, Lizzie and Emma actually had left the house because of an argument that they had, a dispute that they had basically had, and they had been gone for a while. And even when they came back, Lizzie didn't immediately go back to the house. She actually stayed in like a hotel or a friend's house, something like that, for a few days before going back to her actual house by the time they got back to Falls River. So there was a lot of tension on stuff going on. So there's this, so many ifs. It would be, part of me is like really intrigued by this because of the criminal side of it. I like criminal related stuff, investigations and things like that. And then I love paranormal stuff, and I also love history stuff. So overall, I really like this sort of story, even though it may sound weird. I like reading about this stuff. And the fact is still a huge mystery to this day is interesting. And even like paranormally wise, people have been trying to ask who did it. And even paranormal wise, there seems to be a mix and no answers and things like that. When they went to the Maplecrop house, Lisbeth was still saying that she didn't do it. And something like that. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, just say you believe in ghosts for now. If you stay in the area where you commit the crime because you say that you want to see how people react when they found out they've been wrong all along about you, and you even into death are protesting it, it's strange to think, like, would either she didn't do it or she did it and she separated herself from it to the point where she doesn't even think she did it. So it's just so many, but again, that could play into the whole mental thing. She may have just separated herself completely from it if she was the one who done it. But again, no one knows. I did read a thing where Bridget had actually said she had helped Lizzie cover something up, or the Bordens cover something up. So Bridget probably knew more than she ever said, maybe. Or maybe she had found out later on and then still kept it, didn't say anything, but she had said that on her deathbed. So the thing was sometimes with that, depending on the condition, it didn't actually talk about like what she was dying of or how sick she was. Sometimes depending on how the way the person, like what is causing their death, if their mind is not fully there, they might say and omit things that didn't actually happen. So you can't 100% go off that. Plus she didn't say what it was. I mean, it easily could have been that she helped Lizzie cover up the fact that she had committed the murders, or Lizzie could have found out it was her sister, and to protect her sister she was covering something up, or something along those lines. Who knows what it really was, because she never said particular what it was, other than that she had helped her cover something up. So yeah, this house is one huge mystery on it, and it has left behind a lot of paranormal in its wake. So, as I mentioned, this house is a bed and breakfast now, and it does have a gift shop outside. In fact, they sell things like Lizzie bobbleheads and little fake axes and hatches and things like that, which is, again, slightly strange, but we as a human race are slightly strange. In fact, this story even has like a little, not necessarily a nursery rhyme, but you know, those little kid songs that kids sing to do stuff. In particular, I found out this one was particularly sung when you were playing jump rope, which a lot of people have probably heard this. I didn't know there was a second part until like I was doing big research on this, but there is a second part. But the first part a lot of people actually know, which is Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. And apparently, this was a jump roping thing. But there also was a second part that like I said, I didn't know about. And that is, Andrew Borden is now dead. Lizzie hit him on the head. Up in heaven he will sing, on the gallows she will swing. So, quite a little dark song to have for jump rope, but we also have Ring Around the Rosie, Ashes Full of Posy, that whole thing, which is about the Black Plague. And I think London Bridge is actually about some big traumatic event as well. So, you know, we're just really good at making little kid things off of traumatic events. But back to the spooks. So yeah, this is a bed and breakfast. You can actually stay here. They do allow people to stay. They've actually, a lot of the rooms that I am working on may not be fully to what they have them now also, because I was talking about beforehand. But one of the rooms in particular, it's called Miss Borden's room, which is connected to the master bedroom, which from the blueprints shows that it's more of like a place with like a vanity and like place like that. But Andrew's safe was also in there, and something else of his was also in there. So it was a mixture of their stuff, but it was basically a little extra room that they could walk into. It is now another bedroom I've seen, like, in that video I watched, and that's basically because it's another room they can rent out. It's sad to say, a lot of this haunted stuff does eventually get sold so much, and I can't imagine if they're actually... I do believe in ghosts, but if you don't believe in the ghosts, just let's say that these ghosts are actually here. They have to constantly live with their story of their gruesome murders constantly being talked about over and over again. There is pictures of their dead bodies throughout the house and stuff like that. So it's I'm sure it's not fun for them, but maybe you get used to it over time as a ghost. Who knows? But again, so it is very known as a very haunted, active place. The most requested room is the guest room, which is the room where Abby died in. Again, we are strange humans. A lot of the common reports in this house are flickering lights, shadows, and voices. Apparently in Lizzie's room, a lot of time you can hear voices being talked. Apparently a well-known ghost is Andrew. They're pretty sure Andrew is there, and so is Abby. But Andrew, according to like a lot of the people that are like staff there, says he's the most prominent one. You can hear heavy boots walking up and down the stairs, walking around. In some cases, there's even been children voices heard, which might be associated with the other gruesome tale that I'm not going to go into right now or in this video. Maybe I could talk about it at some later time, or like make a house, try to remake that house if I can find at least some good pictures of it. But the house next door, just to briefly go into it, was owned by Andrew's uncle, and his wife basically ended up taking her own life and before she actually had done some pretty horrible things to her kids. One survived, the other two did not. So that is believed why there might be some sounds of some giggling and like children and stuff. But again, a lot of times it is women's voices and footsteps. There has been like mist caught on pictures near where Abby had laid, where her body was. And I do know that ghost teams usually get quite a bit of good responses within the house. Now, I do know from my memory, when I watched Ghost Hunters, the old Ghost Hunters, I've tried to find somewhere to rewatch them. I thought Hulu would have had them, because I talked about I didn't want to go up for Hulu, but I thought maybe if I just went up for a little while, and because I only had to pay like so much to upgrade to it for a temporary time, I'll rewatch all of them. It was literally one episode. I went up so much money for one episode. There's like 8 or 9 seasons or so. It was season 5, like episode something. One episode, and that's all it was. That's all they had up there. It was really stupid and really baffling to me. But anyway, so I was trying to go watch those, and I do know that they went to the Borden House, and I briefly remember it. I know they really didn't connect to Lizzie. I think there has been some connection to Emma, but again, Andrew and Abby are like the big ones. The big spirits that are claimed to be connected to and replying. But on that one show that I mentioned that I watched, where they actually went to Maplecroft, it did seem like they did get in contact with Lizzie. But she does not like to be called Lizzie. She likes to be called Lizbeth. That is sort of weird to say, even though it's very close to Elizabeth. You just take, like, the E part out of it. This is Elizabeth. It's sort of strange to say, but I sort of like it at the same time because it is a little bit different. But anyway, so yeah, so she prefers to be called Lisbeth. So whether or not her spirit every once in a while shows up in this house, who really knows, but it would be interesting to actually get a chance to actually maybe go here and stay here. I would just even like the tour aspect of it, but obviously since there is a chance to stay here, like an option to, I would not mind it. Obviously I would not want to stay alone, because I'm the type of person who I really like these spooky paranormal stuff, and I like want ghost things to happen, but at the same time, sometimes like I know I'd rather have another person there just in case it like gets to my head. But yeah, so it would be pretty interesting to go here and, you know, witness some of the stuff for myself. Again, there's apparently a lot of shadows. Apparently a lot of times the shadows are in the attic and then the basement. And a lot of the footsteps throughout the house, the lights flickering. The lights flickering is probably one of the most things I read a lot. So apparently that happens quite a bit here. So that would be partially startling as well. Now, I would like to iterate if you are thinking about going and visiting some of these haunted places because, like, you hadn't heard of them before, or you didn't know you could visit them or whatever, and then you, like, watch this and you're like, ooh, maybe I want to go visit this. And you're watching my speed build. There is bathrooms in this place. I did not actually build any bathrooms, and I realized that after the fact. There are 2 rooms that were labeled sink room in the blueprint, and I did not really know what a sink room was. There was also something down in the basement. I think it was an abbreviation of something, but it was like PRIV, and that was it. So I don't know what that was, so I left that empty. In the sink room, I literally just put a sink. I was like, I'm just gonna put a sink in here. That's a sink room. There is bathrooms, but I do know from what I heard, there's only one bathroom that is shared between basically everyone, and then one room has access to one of the bathrooms on its own. But there's 2 bathrooms, and I would say that it is probably those sink rooms. That is probably a bathroom that would make the most sense to me. But also, like I was saying, Andrew was a very frugal guy, so maybe back in the day there actually wasn't a working toilet inside the house, or like anything close to a working toilet. I'm not quite sure. Now, if you've ever actually got a chance to stay at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, let me know some of your stories if you have any. I love hearing little spoopy stories. So, you know, if you went there and you got to experience something, let me know down in the comments. Again, if you would like for me to actually still try to do haunted builds every once in a while, please let me know down in the comments below for that as well. I hope you've really liked this build and liked the tale of Lizzie Borden if you didn't know all the details or actually didn't know it. I know it's a pretty popular tale, and I was actually... my boyfriend was one of the people that actually didn't know it, and I was a little surprised, but at the same time not surprised. But yeah, anyway, so if you liked hearing the little tale and hearing more about the stories, definitely hit that lovely like button, subscribe, and all that lovely YouTube goodiness. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!